Welcome, colleagues. If we could make a start, please. First of all, you'll see up on the screen there's a QR code, so if I could ask you if you could download that code if you want to participate. Apparently, there's going to be some kind of participation during the address. So this is my final official role as BERA President, because the Presidential Address is the point in the proceedings when I hand over to my successor, Marlon Moncrieffe. So it's a great privilege. It seems like no time at all that I was standing ready to give my presidential address in Liverpool. The time has gone very quickly. It's a great honour to be BERA President, and I'm very happy to be passing on the baton to the very capable hands of Marlon Moncrieffe, who I will invite now to give the presidential address. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian, my big sister, my big BERA sister, indeed. This is really, really important, and thank you very much. I'm delighted, I really am delighted to become the 38th president of the British Educational Research Association. Man and women make their plans, or God has the final say in some respects. I didn't plan to do this at all, but it came up like this, and I put myself forwards, and here we are. And so I'm honoured to be able to address our national and international colleagues at this 50th anniversary conference, BERA's golden anniversary. It's also the anniversary of McDonald's. It's the 50th anniversary as well. Did you know that? The burgers and chips are on BERA. I'm going to talk about. Does this work? Yeah, it does work. I'm going to talk about these four things: BERA in their work with BERA, BERA's dynamic identity in community and culture, and my educational research interests, and the themes for my forthcoming presidential seminar series. I've written a paper. It's like a thesis, look. Okay, because apparently this gets published. So I'm going to be referring quite a lot to this. You'll see me sort of reading a bit and looking up and getting some responses. But we are going to use some polls, unconventional for a BERA presidential address, because I want to get some audience participation to get your views on a few things that I've been thinking about in educational research. So yes, we're really pleased to be able to host the BERA focal meeting. It's been amazing so far. We've got another sort of 3 or 4 days of this as well, so it's been amazing. It's our pleasure. I want to thank President Lisa Ibasun for delivering, for giving her thoughtful address, and the panel discussions that we had this morning were fantastic as well. Already at the start of my address and this presentation, I can talk about the championing of educational research through BERA's past in the present. Our hosting of this BERA focal meeting reifies the vision of our former BERA presidents, Jeff Whitty, John Furlong, and Ian Mentor, each of whom contributed to the development of BERA. And it was our 2019 and 2022 President, Dominic Wise, who led our way back into partnership with BERA, and he took on that through the work of Gary McCulloch, who was doing some work on the international strategy there and then. And that's come about after a 10-year absence of BERA from BERA. And it was Vivian Baumfield, during her presidency of BERA, who often used our membership magazine Research Intelligence to speak about the importance of collaboration and collective responsibility for the future of educational research. And she affirmed this view as a foundational principle of BERA, citing our first president, John Nisbet. Work for me, there you go, okay? And he encouraged the membership to look outwards and across the diverse educational research community and to the future. Well, here we are now in that future, whether this was Nisbet's vision, but here we are now in the future working with BERA in Manchester at this fantastic conference. I think, I see this call from Nisbet as being acted out in the present today and with our partners across the globe. BERA's leadership in contributing to the enhancement of UK educational research is for promoting understanding of the fact that the highest quality research in any national context is situated in an international field of scholarship. So in our collaborations with BERA, we seek to strengthen our international early career research network, and we're going to work together to conceive new publishing opportunities if they can come by. And we can build together our existing educational research training networks. There's also a seat for BERA on BERA's council to support its governance, where we can build alliances, particularly in aiming to work with colleagues in parts of the world where educational research is less well supported. And I think just by looking around the conference hall today, if you looked at the delegate list, like I did, maybe ticked off a few names that you want to be working with, okay, over 2,000 attendees, and you'll appreciate the depth of knowledge and opportunity that this special conference has brought for possible engagement and for capacity building as well. We've got over 70 nations represented from across the globe for sharing the best of educational research. So it's very special opportunity for all of us. It brings amazing multicultural, intercultural, cross-cultural educational research opportunities. So make hay. I mean, this is going to be great for everybody, and your own interest to sort of see how they align with colleagues from across the world. At BERA, we believe in the power and value of cognitive diversity, and we see that this comes through the power of ethnic and culturally diverse interaction. This is truly where educational research can be advanced for impact on policy and practice. And so I just want to thank you all for coming to Manchester. It stopped raining to make this happen. I think it has anyway. And thank you to the University of Manchester for hosting this as well. Not that one. That's for later. I want to give a special mention to our doctoral students in the room. Hello, or in the next room as well, and our early career researchers. Thank you for being here. You are central to our future. You are future BERA presidents. You'll be standing here in the future from ECR to BERA president as well. You'll be on our council as well. So welcome to you. And for those of you who are here as first timers, welcome to you as well. First timers to a BERA conference. I think you've given your BERA Educational Research Conference virginity away to our very, very, very big gig. And you'll never forget your first time. You never forget your first time. Welcome to Glastonbury. Welcome to Glastonbury. Yes. Welcome to Glastonbury. No, it's not my idea. I thought, well, actually, it probably was, but anyway, that's another story. This came from our colleague Richard Home of the University of Dundee. Is Richard Home here? No, he's not here. He said he was coming. Anyway, Richard, he wrote about this. Thank you, Richard. And he said, how might attending the 50th BERA conference compare to one of the world's biggest outdoor pop music festivals? It's a useful comparison, I think, because both events were established in the first half of the 1970s. And just like the Glastonbury Music Festival, our annual conference has grown to become world-renowned in the world of educational research. And the statement on the BERA website for describing and promoting this week's conference says this. It says, we identify as a community that is dynamic and changes over time, not just in terms of its members, but in the way that it does things. Okay, I think there's some truth in this, so I'll talk a bit more about that. I think the Glastonbury Music Festival has demonstrated fluidity in presentation of its identity by the way that it does things. For better or for worse, depends on your perspective. It's no longer seen by a norm of rock music or pop music headliners. You know, we have dance music, rave music, grime artists, hip-hop artists. They've all emerged as headliners over time, haven't they? So it's made Glastonbury watchable, if you want. Although Oasis, yes, Oasis, the rock and roll kings of this city, to much hype have recently reformed, haven't they? So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens next year at Glastonbury, whether they go back to that sort of headlining thing. But look, for BERA, and perhaps more recently over the last decade, we've championed the work of a brilliant range of leading and cutting-edge educational researchers from across the globe. And I think, you know, I've been to some educational research conferences where the fixity of identity and the worldview of the organisation remains traditional. You know, in some senses they remain sort of fixed in a particular time and place, locked to something called a traditional form of historical consciousness. I'll be using that term later on in this discussion as well to more effect, but here it is now, okay? Where, you know, these educational research cliques, the founding concept of the past remains firmly rooted in the present. And will be unchanged for the future. You know, they're stuck in a particular way of being in that respect. In some ways, perhaps that's the same for BERA. You know, in some elements, we also reference back to our origins, and we also make annual awards for some of our former presidents, such as John Nisbet. I mentioned John Nisbet, Brian Simon. We champion their names as BERA leaders, as exemplary reference points for, you know, just reminding ourselves of our identity of who we are. For some BERA traditionalists, meeting at bars for drinks, Sean Hayes, before or after late afternoon conference seminars, Richard Race, is a reference point ritual that still remains, Dominic Weiss. You know, so there's still some strong traditions in that respect. But what I've seen in BERA's evolution and transformation over the years is a critical consciousness outside of that traditional frame of historical consciousness being fixed, you know, past, present, and future stays the same. In the adaptation of our identity, a fluidity that is relevant to this current day. Okay? I think we are critically conscious in our decision making for conference speakers. And we're going to get better at that as well. We'll keep improving on that, ensuring that we have a diverse range of leaders in their fields from across the globe who will join with us to share what they see as ways forward for navigating the challenges ahead in our complex world. So I just want to say congratulations to all of our keynote speakers. I can't wait to learn so much from you. I learned so much from Lisa in her keynote, and I've told her how much I want to connect with her in terms of things that I've done in my career. So yeah, just congratulations to our keynote speakers, and thank you for coming. Our community membership is growing across the 4 nations of England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. And this, added to our diverse international community, means that we have well over 3,000 members across the world. And we're responding positively and proactively to the diversity of our community. For example, this is going to be mirrored in our future governance model. The devolution of power and the shaping of formal educational policy across the 4 nations has given differences to our systems and structures of education. Therefore, in our recently well-considered review of our governing structure, it's been proposed that the BERA trustees formally must consist of members from across the 4 nations. And it's not that this broad representation was not happening before. It's just that our BERA Council agree that this model of diversity should become formally written into the constitution of our association. And this will ensure representation of culturally distinctive national voices of leadership, for taking positive action across the trustee board, and for championing and leading educational research in the future. So yeah, I think our conference, you know, the people that we're walking by and we're talking to, and the people that we're meeting, the people that we're seeing, it provides a visual understanding of our expanding, multifaceted identity. Our our annual conference is the space where our imagined community becomes real through our face-to-face interaction, our engagement, and our sharing our research with each other that we spent all summer sort of getting together in excitement about coming to BERA to share this. In my experiences of coming to this conference, I've always found this to be a space of equity, of inclusion and respect, and good feedback. It's where doctoral students and early career researchers can rub shoulders in discussion and learning with more experienced educational researchers across the 4 nations and across the world. So I know you've been looking around you, read those name badges, see who you see. You'll see your educational research idol out there. The educational research superstars are here. You are the educational research superstars. And the rising stars are here too. So yeah, do approach your educational research idol. The books that you've been reading, especially if you're an early career researcher or doctoral researcher and you see a name, wait a minute, he or she is here. Sign a book deal with a world-leading academic publisher because they're all here too as well. I'm not going to say any names, but they're all here as well. I'm not going to promote them. And then celebrate by dancing the night away at our gala dinner. And most of all, enjoy the conference because we've got an extra day, haven't we? So it's going to be great. Here comes my first poll, I think. Let's have a look. Here it is. So I'm just going to wait for guys to get this up. What are your priorities for attending the conference this year? Choose 2 options from below. I think we're going to use a Slido for this. Showing your research, networking with existing colleagues, to meet new people to establish the beginning of new collaborations, make links with potential publishers or funders, a Manchester shopping spree, to be king or queen of the dance floor at the BERA gala dinner. Now that was quite competitive last year, I must admit. So is that poll coming up on your phones? Good. Let's see. Some results are coming up. The rational decision is winning. It's okay. I expect it. Rattles. I can't see the bottom one. Who wants to be the king or queen of the dance floor at the BERA gala dinner? Because we had somebody from Singapore last year breakdancing and spinning on his head. Should have been at the Olympics. Let's see. Okay. I think we're gonna close the poll in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's stop there. Oh, it's got. I need the results up. I need the results up so I can pass a microphone to ask people some questions. Is it possible? Or do we have to do it again? Yes. Brilliant. Okay. So, showing your research, rational, meet new people to establish new collaborations. Does anybody want to talk about why they've come to BERA through those particular responses, showing your research and meeting new people to establish new collaborations? Anybody want to elaborate a bit more? Or the Manchester shopping spree? I've got some names that I can give to you for that.
I think it's interesting that the published getting sort of things for publication for publishers and with funders is right at the bottom.
Oh wow.
What does that say about research perspectives at the moment?
Okay, hold on to that question, everybody. Maybe we can discuss that. But no, good point. But maybe people have deals already and they don't need any more deals. But no, it's true. There's some good publishers down there and good opportunities. Anybody want to talk about the excitement of showing their research for the first time at BERA? No? I'm giving you the opportunity to interact with me because the next bit's going to be long. Lego tomorrow. Sorry?
I'm excited to play Lego tomorrow.
Lego as part of your presentation. There you go. Here comes.
Yes.
Switch it on.
Yes.
Say who you are and where you're from, please.
Hello, everyone. Fadwa Govert's SIG convener of the Alternative Education, and I'm doing a workshop on Lego, and it's the first time I've done it many times, but the first time at BERA, doing a Lego workshop. So,
wow,
yeah,
that sounds great, doesn't it? I don't think I've been to a BERA conference where I've got to come and play Lego. So, I mean, and to learn how that influences teaching and learning in the classroom. So that's really an interesting one. Here's an opportunity for you to plug what you're doing, by the way. And no one's taken the opportunity. Okay, we'll leave it there for a minute. We'll go back to my talk. Okay, thank you very much. So, let's just carry on. So, educational research for the improvement of practice and the public benefit is what I'm going to talk about now. It's okay to pat ourselves on the back to say well done at 50. 50 is a milestone. But in the celebrations, in the blowing of the candles, as we make our wishes for the best days ahead, and we'll be doing that in November at our AGM, we need to reflect on and reinforce our purpose and mission to meet with our charitable objectives. And that is to encourage the pursuit of educational research and its application for both the improvement of practice and the public benefit. And BERA seeks to carry out its charitable and its strategic objectives in championing educational research, and we do this independent of the state. We do this independent of the government. It is, however, in the interest of BERA to critique state-conceived educational policy when we want to, okay? BERA brings a respected voice of critical authority in advancing interpretations of state-conceived policy designed for use in practice by educators. However, as we know today, for the educational researcher in the UK, times are really, they're quite tough, aren't they? But the context and climate, following 14 years of coalition Conservative government education policy making influence across England, our universities are experiencing big financial troubles. Okay? Despite the year 2021 Research Excellence Framework world-leading outputs being greater than they were in the year 2014, there have been cuts to government funding of educational research, and more so in comparison to other research disciplines. And following on from our State of the Discipline research findings, the conditions for educational research funding across the UK are being examined in depth by BERA. And we are fortunate and extremely pleased that David James of Cardiff University is leading our important inquiry with an expert team of colleagues from across charities, research councils, and other universities. So here's a thank you to David for your leadership in this and for doing this for our membership. The key findings are going to be shared at our AGM in November, and there's no extension, David. Earlier this year, it was revealed that the Department for Education of the former Conservative government drew up a blacklist, or is it? Yep. I'm not going to name any names. A blacklist of educators who make minor criticisms of government policy. Imagine that. I'm not on this list because my criticisms are major criticisms of government policy. But if you were on that list and you're here today, will you mind raising your hand? Security. Dominic Wise. No, honestly. I did see some names named in newspapers, and they did match up with names on this delegate list. Maybe people have gone into hiding, but there you go. That government drew a list of, to sort of black mark educational researchers. Well, thank you for coming to conference if you are here, and you're welcome. In this new era, in this new era for the UK, with a Labour government coming to power in July, their educational policies and plans are now under our public scrutiny. And this new era of government can possibly bring for us, as educational researchers, a fresh opportunity for promoting and championing the power of educational research in advising on policy and its potential impacts on the practice of educators. And there's going to be a plethora of themes to discuss in considering what's next in advancing the quality of education for all through the best educational research. So, the review of the national curriculum for schools and pupils in England. The Secretary of State for Education, Bridget Phillipson, has commissioned a review of the national curriculum for schools and pupils in England. And I think we should congratulate Becky Francis. She's a BERA colleague, a former BERA council member, and she's been trusted or tasked to lead this review. Enviable or unenviable, depends on your perspective, but she's a BERA colleague and a former BERA council member. And it's said that the main purpose of this review is to ensure that the curriculum balances ambition, relevance, flexibility, inclusivity for all children and young people. Now, I'm very interested in this review because for the first 15 years of my career in education, I was a teacher, I was a primary school teacher. I taught in 4 primary schools across London and the South East, and I was a senior leader of maths and English, of PE. I was a deputy head as well. And of course, you're working through the curriculum in terms of policy, in terms of teaching and learning and assessment. So I'm really interested in what's going to happen next in this respect. So one of the main aims that I'm really interested in is to do with what the government says here about a curriculum that reflects the issues and diversities of our society, ensuring all children and young people are represented. Okay? I want your views on this one. This is a really interesting one for me. I'm not going to use it for any research, just for our own interest here. Here comes my second poll then. Okay? It's the last one for a long time. But I want everyone to respond to try to respond to this in relation to your own national context as well. So imagine you're asked by your government to lead the review of the current national curriculum for schools and pupils with a brief to design curriculum aims and contents that reflects the issues and diversities of society, ensuring all children and young people are represented. What would be your priority educational research areas in your call for evidence to support with delivering your recommendations to your government? So just choose 2 options from below, and I'll give you some time to do that, and maybe we can discuss what's come up. Thanks a lot. Is it disappeared? Yeah, there you go. Oh, it's moving along a bit, isn't it? Somebody's voting twice. That's okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can tell that I'm a former primary school teacher, can't you? Right. Okay, let's leave it there for a minute. Let's get some feedback. Teacher education is winning. Good. Anti-racist education's high. SMSC, spiritual, moral, social, cultural education. We've got the microphones ready. Who wants to talk about what they voted for? I mean, or in relation to these responses for a bit. Anybody want to talk about teacher education and anti-racist education, or some others? Any hands? There's a hand over here. Just say who you are and where you're coming from. Perfect.
My name's Penny Rabiger.
Penny.
I think that you could not have anti-racist education as a separate one, but to say that it needs to be woven through all of them, and that there is no teacher education without anti-racist education. And the summer maybe reminded us that we are educating people who go out and riot in racist ways. So that's what I think.
Thank you, Penny. I'm going to come onto those rights in a moment, and you think anti-racist education should be filtered through all of those other elements. Anybody else want to speak to these responses that you've shared to us? Over here, thanks very much.
From University of Northampton.
Hi, Jane.
And I'm a really passionate advocate for early childhood education.
Okay.
I'd like to see it there because that's where it all starts.
Yep, so that would come under other, and I'm going to talk about a publication that covers early childhood education in relation to this as well later on, so maybe you might be interested in that as well too. Cool, brilliant. Here's one here, let's see.
Okay, it's Jack Whitehead, University of Cumbria.
Hi, Jack.
Hi. Most of my research is focused on enhancing professionalism, in teacher education. And it just seems to be a great omission at the moment in literally all parties when you look at their educational policies. And I think educational research has got a fundamental role to play in enhancing professionalism, but it means taking responsibility for one's own educational influence in one's own learning and the learning of others. And not many seem to be researching that important educational influence in relation to professionalism.
Educational influence and what we bring for our own experiences of socialisation.
Mainly values. What you bring, all I'm saying is each one of us has got a constellation of values, a unique constellation of values that we could use to evaluate our educational influence in learning. So the learning has got to involve values of human flourishing. And at the moment, I just feel that's one of our weaknesses.
Thank you. Let's take one more I'll take one more and maybe one more afterwards because I want to use all of my 1 hour and 20 minutes. Just up the top there. Yes, please, thank you.
I think over the years, the sociology of education has become a taboo for most governments. They don't want teachers to encourage pupils to critique and be aware of structures of power in society. I think the sociology of education has become tiny, if at all present. For example, in the school-based system we have in England that I'm talking about tomorrow, it's like, oh no, we don't give that to teachers that are training in the school-based system. Just teach them to be practical and pragmatic.
Good point about the session. Yep, there's a clap there. Brilliant. Thank you very much. You didn't say who you were, by the way. Who are you? Sorry? Holligan, okay. Should have been. Chris Holligan, thank you, Chris. Okay, brilliant. Okay, some really good responses there. Thank you, everybody. Let's move on with this. What am I going to say next then? Okay, so, brilliant. Good to get you involved, but now it's just going to be about me. Right. Look, a key aspect of my educational research from forming my practice when I was a teacher was for championing racial equity and inclusion in primary school history curriculum teaching and learning. I conducted an original study on the possibilities of curriculum teaching and learning through the experiences and perceptions of mass migration and settlement to the British Isles over the ages. And I researched with teachers, teacher educators, trainee teachers for sharing their understandings and interpretations of citizenship, culture, community, nation building, nationhood, national identity, and Britishness, whatever that is, for teaching about British history. And we looked at cross-cultural conflicts over time. We juxtaposed 8th century notions of migrants and invaders, settlements, uprisings, violence, peace, coexistence, alongside 20th century notions of the same terms. And this included notions of race riots and racist attacks. All of this looks and sounds familiar, quite familiar to what's happened in the summer, doesn't it, don't you think? Some may argue that those terms, race riots or racist attacks, are anachronistic terms to apply to an 8th century context, but the violent actions speak louder than the words in that respect. So that's what we juxtapose. And also, if you're a Year 4 teacher, you're teaching about Vikings and Anglo-Saxons and the violence and the bloodshed that made, that sort of contributed to sort of nation building as well. So young people are learning about this sort of stuff anyway. But the statutory teaching and learning in relation to nation building and national identity making in our primary school curriculum, in our current curriculum, is a myopic narrative, white people only narrative. That's my issue, okay? All non-white people of minority ethnic groups in their mass migration and in contributing to nation building and in national identity making are fully missing from the curriculum policy document. And to me, that's shameful, very shameful. My research also exposed the general pattern of an uncritical, complicit cultural reproduction of this whites-only curriculum narrative by white British teachers, teacher educators, and trainee teachers in their practice. They hadn't had any training to see things through a critical perspective. So I asked, how can teaching and learning about the history of our nation building and our national identity making become more equitable and inclusive for children and young people? And I wanted to do this by foregrounding ethnic and cultural diversity in considering the ethnogenesis of people who have migrated and settled on the British Isles over the ages. And by ethnogenesis, I mean how new ethnic groups emerge and grow into society over time through cross-cultural and cross-ethnic fertilization of already existing ethnic groups. All right, because they've been involved in national identity making and nation building as well. So I've used my educational research to call for the decolonizing of our primary school history curriculum and for the decolonizing of teacher education through anti-racist praxis. There are some curriculum theorists such as Michael Young who discuss curriculum as a preeminent issue in education. This is because in the concept of curriculum policy making are questions about the purpose of education and what should be learned. Other commentators point to where the power lays in taking decisions about the purpose of education. They argue what is learned through curriculum ceases to be democratically developed visions of the nation's future citizens, particularly its children and young people. But what about the visions of curriculum offered by those who have been sidelined from representation, such as non-white minority ethnic people in our society? Okay, the Black Lives Matter anti-racism public protests are really important. These protests showed an amazing strength and solidarity of people from a wide range of ethnic groups across the UK. They were demanding social justice and, in particular, amplifying awareness and support for a decolonised national history curriculum. I want to consider these anti-racism protests for speaking to the government and seeking social justice through curriculum reform in what the scholar Derek Bell defines as an interest convergence. An interest convergence is where moments of racial progress are supposedly won. This is when white power holders, in this case the government, perceive self-interest in accommodating the demands of a minoritized groups. However, this meeting of interest was never going to happen, as I would explain. So the Black Lives Matter's anti-racism protest inspired public confidence to directly challenge national curriculum policy. Public petitions were written and delivered to UK Parliament demanding government debate for action to be taken on curriculum review and change. One petition, titled "Teach Britain's Colonial Past" as part of the UK's compulsory curriculum, was supported by 268,722 signatories, including mine and Gary McCulloch's. Further petitions were signed by members of the public in their tens of thousands, including add education on diversity and racism to all school curriculums and making the UK education curriculum more inclusive of black and minority ethnic group history. In November 2020, the House of Commons Petitions Committee and the Women and Equalities Committees met with leading educationalists and academics and educational researchers, and some of you are here who are part of those discussions. We gave research evidence via the theme Black History and Cultural Diversity in the Curriculum. And the opportunity in this debate was for discussion with the former Conservative Government Schools Minister, Nick Gibb. In preparing for these evidence sessions, the House of Commons Petitions Committee sought the views and experiences of teachers, school staff and home educators through 2 online surveys of people working in primary schools and secondary schools. And this was to gather a range of thoughts on how effective the national curriculum is in ensuring children and young people experience a truly diverse education. Well, those views and experiences of teachers, school staff, educators, and the online surveys all said that the research, it pointed to an ineffective national curriculum. And that's educational research by the House of Commons Petitions Committee. An ineffective national curriculum. Here's what the data said. The responses included, giving teachers the flexibility to teach about black history is not sufficient. A statutory requirement is needed. And, there were 90% of respondents in that who said that. And in the next comment, the curriculum as a whole does not reflect the diversity of a modern Britain. Okay, 74% of primary school respondents strongly disagreed with the statement that the content, the set text, resources and guidance associated with the national curriculum fully reflect the diversity of modern Britain. So all of the problems with the national curriculum for history that were highlighted, through some of the Black Lives Matters protests, the public petitions, all of the problems were made very clearly to Parliament using educational research, broad educational research, educationalists, teachers, educational researchers. Yet the Conservative government position on this remained stubbornly fixed and in full opposition to the educational research evidence of academics, teachers, and members of the public. All of this was dismissed, and there's a political reason for this. Okay, so it's suggested that the history curriculum has been used by various governments across the world to drive the promotion of a particular celebratory vision and cultural reproduction of the national past, for promoting democratic citizenship or understanding how society has come to be. Arguably, the Conservative-led coalition government curriculum aimed to fuse those. But this same government had announced that multiculturalism had failed British society. And from this perspective, the review of the national curriculum fully invested in a neoconservative paradigm of Anglocentrism. In effect, this reasserted a primary history curriculum for teaching and learning through a monocultural, Anglocentric celebratory vision in the cultural reproduction of the national past. And in the years following this policy implementation, a Conservative government anti-woke agenda. This to abnormalise and position all social justice struggles associated to anti-racism as extremist and politically deviant. So all of this is attempted to belittle decolonising the curriculum in education and educational research, and has sought to discredit and censor the usage of critical race theory in schools. And not just in the UK, where am I? Not just in the UK. In her article, Waking Up to the Anti-Woke Agenda, Schulman provides a stark interpretation of the USA context. She writes, inclusivity is now considered a dirty word, and anti-racist actions are labelled as discrimination. And she reveals that only 5 states from out of 50 have not seen censorship laws. So culture warring, triggered by conservative politicians and the media through their anti-woke discourses, aim to attack and undermine all quality educational research which brings quality evidence in advocating for advancing quality curriculum teaching and learning for all. So, in bringing attention to the culture wars in society and in education and educational research, I want to turn my thoughts to how I see all of this in relation to the ethnic nationalist, racist riots of violence and thuggery led by racist mobs that shocked England this summer. Online misinformation, distorted discourses and lies fueled the culture war flames of fear about multiculturalism in England, and non-white people were scapegoated. Right? They were scapegoated and targeted as the nation's problems. What the racists cannot cope in the reality of a perpetually transforming multicultural society across the British Isles, and this has been happening since the year dot. You know, there's diversity in whiteness as well. You know, there's diversity across all racial labels, if you want. But the racists cannot cope in the reality of a perpetually transforming multicultural society across the British Isles. This is their grievance. So, you know, my question is the concept of nation, it's just an idea, nation. Just like BERA is just an idea, yeah? But is the concept of nation fixed or is it fluid? Is BERA fixed or is BERA fluid? Yeah, we're a micro society, we're talking about larger. Is it fixed or fluid in its making and meaning? Is the concept of national identity or BERA's identity, is it fixed or is it fluid? And this depends on a perspective of the past, present and future, a sense of historical consciousness. So the racist nativists hold a fanaticized view of a whites-only British past, desired in the present and for the future. And this gives to them a psychological disorder that Gilroy has described as melancholia. In rage, this psychological disorder has led to self-harm of their own communities and horror inflicted on minority ethnic group people of colour who are living peacefully in coexistence. These far-right nativist racist narratives are now more mainstream than many would like to think. This far-right mentality exposed across England this summer may also be understood by the Make America Great discourses led by Donald Trump in the USA. This can also be related to the rise of populist radical right parties across Europe. These movements have increased in their presence and relevance in European politics in the last decades. In Spain, France, Sweden, Germany, Austria, Italy, Norway, racist, populist, radical right parties have won seats in national parliaments. And this is now the same here in England with the rise of Reform UK. In response to the racist riots, the Conservative politician and party leadership candidate Mel Stride told The Telegraph, "The riots show white working class boys feel distance from society." Astonishingly, this political discourse is used to spin the issue. The racists who led the riots are now somehow being framed as the victims of society. The potential opposition leader to the Labour government is calling out to the cause of the working class, particularly white working class boys. I thought it was clumsy of Stride to essentialise all white working class boys as the racist rioters, because there were a range of people involved in the racist riots, from people aged 60, in the late 60s, to young children, all with a different range, a range of different motivations. The white people that I know of, and who've told me of their working class origins, were protesting on the Black Lives Matter protest in 2020 in Brighton and in Bristol. And further, according to Bars and colleagues in their study, white working class boys are defined and identified in numerous and different ways, both in research and practice. But I think the Labour government will be very alert to Stry's rhetoric of white working class boys feeling distanced from society. This is because, as part of their plans to initiate social justice in education, Labour have stressed their own intentions to become the champions of the working class and working class pupils in education. So it's a broad colourblind rhetoric that we get in there. But within this broad definition, will be the white working class boys, and quite possibly the ones who Mel Stryde is referring to. And what must also be remembered is the Labour Prime Minister Keir Starmer is the son of a toolmaker, as he kept reminding us during his election campaign. And he's been described as the most working class leader of the Labour Party for a generation. So Starmer has lived his own white working class boy experience. So what's the point I'm making, if you haven't picked this up already? Well, in my view, to be seen and to be known as the political and educational champions of the working class, including those white working class boys distanced from society, must also mean having a high interest in the educational research discourse, which discusses them as educationally disenfranchised, as the forgotten, as the underrepresented in higher education. However, countering educational research from the likes of David Gilbourne and Adjogazzi and colleagues point to this as a sustained campaign of political spin. They warn of misleading media communications to cover up the real inequities and inequalities in education faced by non-white minority ethnic group children and young people. Educational research shows how the greatest levels of racist bullying at schools from their peers and their teachers, and a higher frequency of school exclusions occur to non-white minority ethnic group children, and that's all detrimental to their life and lives and future chances. So, a question that's come to my mind in all that's happened over the summer and over the last 4 years is, to what extent in the aftermath of the racist riots could an interest divergence drive the making of educational policy? Just a question, that's all, okay? So, Feinstein puts this as this. Is it going to come up for me? Here it comes, yeah. Feinstein puts it as this: an interest divergence. The interests of the white working class are habitually pitched against those of minority ethnic groups and immigrants, while larger social and economic structures are left out of debate altogether. Will we be seeing an interest divergence? I don't know. Let's see what happens next with educational policy. So, the Black Lives Matter anti-racism protest of 2020 voiced grievances about racism in society, particularly towards black people. These public protests called for social justice and reform, and they looked at the national history curriculum for reform and for to be reformed to support with addressing their grievances. The Conservative government dismissed this call and all of the educational research in support, all of the quality educational research in support. Following this, an anti-woke agenda as a culture war against anti-racism. The racist riots of violence and thuggery this summer, caused by nativist white mobs, are suggested by some in politics as a show of their grievances. Real or imagined, real or imagined, a show of their grievances. But these grievances were irrationally misdirected in their ugliness, rage, and violently disgusting attacks on innocent non-white groups across England. Condemnation and punishment of the racists must be absolute, but this racist ethnic national view of multiculturalism remains very much alive in England. How might, or might not, the Labour government respond to this? To what extent will we see their position on anti-racist education through the current review of the national curriculum and in the recommendations that follow? Will the teaching and learning of racial literacy become a statutory requirement for schools? Just like the Equality Act says, you know, it's statutory to uphold race equality in that. We need to prepare young people for life, don't we? So maybe racial literacy should become statutory teaching and learning in schools. Or will a colourblind focus and discourse about working class pupils, which must include the white working class boys, remain as the highest policy priority? The language used in describing what will occur during the review of the national curriculum speaks of evolution, not revolution. I'm interested to see how a new national curriculum identity can actually be transformed from the deep roots of what has been sown by a Conservative government. Is it possible? Is it possible? So how educational research through BERA speaks to the review of the national curriculum. As noted, this is what Peter Mortimer, one of our past presidents, said. We must learn how to relate to governments and powerful bodies within the system so as to be able, in this media-dominated world, to be able to address the most appropriate questions in the most appropriate ways. And as noted by our former curriculum theory special interest group conveners Ruth Dan and Chris Hanley, they said that there are many within BERA, within our association, who have the skills and expertise to contribute to consultations and considerations about curriculum change. Well, in the last formal review of curriculum policy, BERA did have some involvement. Our former president, Mary James, she was invited to become a member of the expert panel through the former Education Secretary, Michael Gove. Unfortunately, James withdrew her involvement through a lack of government transparency in the process. Good for Mary for sticking her fingers up and firmly holding on to her professional principles. There were some things happening behind the scenes. It appears to me that from social media, that the expert panel for reviewing the current national curriculum has, it's been announced to a mixed reception across education and the educational research communities. I've reached out to one or two of them that I know, and I've offered my support. But what do we do as BERA? What do we do? We're an association with a relative amount of power and a voice, expertise, skills. What do we do? Do we let it happen to us, or do we give our response? So here's my question. Should BERA carry out its own professional review of the national curriculum for schools in England based on the aims of the review that have been made public? There's no poll for this. It'll take too long. Just for thinking, okay? Should BERA carry out a professional review of the national curriculum? Maybe we don't have to look at all of the aims. Maybe we could select some of the aims. We could even submit our work towards the formal call for evidence in support of Becky Francis and her team. Undertaking an informal review like this provides an opportunity for our special interest groups to work in intersectional collaboration, as what Penny spoke about, things run, in terms of anti-racism running through those themes that I showed earlier. Maybe we could do that. And also across the four nations too. We could look to best practice in Scotland, in Wales, and in Northern Ireland to contribute to the call for evidence. So we've got a relative amount of power to consider this. And it's something that we need to consider seriously in terms of how we respond. It's a very short turnaround for the curriculum review. I think it needs to be in by next year, but maybe we should be showing our relevance as a leading educational research association. Anyway, I think we've already demonstrated a fair amount of prescience in our educational research leadership for informing curriculum policy, theory and practice, and possible transformations. This publication, the BERA Guide to Decolonising the Curriculum, Equity, Inclusion in Educational Research and Practice. It's a masterful volume, if I may say so, which provides the best of four nations and international coverage. So we've got voices from BERA colleagues from across the four nations in this, and international colleagues from Trinidad and Tobago, South Africa, Burundi, Canada, all contributing their voices to this, all BERA members as well. And it's with a view for fostering equity and knowledge production for teaching and learning across the early years. Yeah, there's early years work in this as well, primary, secondary, tertiary, and higher education. So it gives a portrayal of decolonising the curriculum for equity, inclusion, and educational research across all phases. And we'll be talking about that this week with the other books. In conjunction with the British Curriculum Forum, Jerry, we've produced Curriculum in a Changing World. This is a collection of 50 think pieces for showcasing perspectives on curriculum theory, practice, innovation, and inclusion. So we've been looking at curriculum review all the time. It's nothing new for BERA. We do it on a daily basis. How can we contribute to the formal review in that respect? I've got some presidential seminar discussions that will look at the review of the national curriculum. That's going to be championing educational research, policy and practice for curriculum teaching and learning by examining that particular aim that I shared earlier, the issues and diversities of society, ensuring all children and young people are represented through the themes of decolonising the curriculum teaching and learning for all, diversity and citizenship, anti-racism, and teacher education. And I'm reaching out and connecting with leading educational research experts and policymakers and practitioners from across the four nations and internationally to contribute to these seminars. And I begin in Scotland at Moray House School of Education and Sport on the 1st of November. And if you go to the BERA website, you'll be able to see how you can come along to that as well, because the broader amount of voices we have, the better the discussion. I'm going to share a midterm review of my presidential seminars next year at Sussex at the BERA conference, and hopefully some of the lead academics who are part of the presidential seminars will be part of that panel as well. So I look forward to that. So, BERA's action over the years through its founding principle of facing outwards, I think it's transformed and it's enriched our identity indeed as a fluidity. We've learned so much, I've learned so much, and we continue to through engaging with a wider and more diverse community of educational researchers across the four nations and across the globe. I think this week, our hosting of the BERA Focal Meeting, which is so exciting, exemplifies our founding principle that John Nisbet spoke about. In some senses, BERA as a dynamic community of change relates to the transformations of our national community over the ages in a diverse makeup of its people. Our BERA community consists of binary opposites, of differences in our own educational research interests, and there's always going to be different world views amongst us. But this is the challenge to each other, and this is also where the power and richness of our educational research work can be developed and advanced. I think it comes through diversity of ethnic and cultural identities and cognitive diversity and collaboration. In my view, what must be remembered is that the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. The sum of the parts is greater than the whole. So in my term of being the president, I want to continue to embrace our cognitive diversity through our ethnic and cultural diversity in collaboration to demonstrate our collective responsibility for the future of educational research. So we should continue embracing the transforming shape and power of our community so that as a cultural entity, BERA, as a cultural entity, we can be known and seen as embodying and championing the best that has been thought and said through educational research for the public benefit. So this is BERA's 50th anniversary, a good time to be the president. There'll be lots of birthday cake to cut, lots of clinking of champagne glasses and stuff. Thank you for listening and being part of this amazing and unique conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I get a goodie bag. Shall I go off now?
I think we should continue the thanks to Marlon for his wide-ranging and challenging presidential address, setting the agenda for the next 50 years of BERA. So thank you, Marlon.